Hi friends, welcome back. Today I'm going to be spotlighting the documentary #Skoden by writer-director Damien Eagle Bear. The film dives into the origins of Turtle Island's most iconic meme to redefine the man at the center of it all, Pernell Badarn. In the early days of social media, there was an image that circulated of an indigenous man with raised fists ready to strike. This photo was initially shared to make fun of and reinforce stereotypes of indigenous people. But by adding the word Skoden, spelled Skoden, it created a bit of a pop culture icon within the indigenous community. So underneath this viral fame was a kind and generous Blackfoot man from Kenai who faced huge challenges while living on the streets. The documentary looks to reclaim Pernell's humanity, offering a much deeper and more complex portrait of the person behind the meme. I will say that I had the privilege to screen the film in lead up to its premiere at the Hot Docs Canadian International Documentary Film Festival. I also speak with the writer-director Damien Eagle Bear, and I'm happy to say that the film will be screening again in Toronto as part of the Imaginative Film Festival. So I leave you with my conversation with Damien Eagle Bear and encourage you to seek this film either online if you're not able to make it to the in-person screening at Imaginative. Hi friends, I am back from Hot Docs International Documentary Film Festival here in Toronto. I am joined today by Damien Eagle Bear. Nice to meet you, Damien.
Nice to meet you too.
Damien, you are an artist and a filmmaker out of Alberta, but based in BC. For folks that don't know much about your work, maybe let's start a little bit of the conversation there.
Yeah, so I'm a Blackfoot from the Kainai Nation, or the Blood Reserve, and so that's where I grew up. And then I moved to BC to go to film school, and then I just started working out there because there's not so many jobs in Alberta for film work. So did that for a few years, doing videography stuff, all very doc adjacent. And so been doing that for a few years, and I started moving into producing and directing. So I have quite a technical skill set.
Right. So did you think that you would always end up being in the documentary sphere in some way?
Yeah, I think so. I think I kind of always, there's always when I was younger, I said, you want to be Quentin Tarantino? But
Quentin has that strong hold on folks.
I know, as you get older, you're like, oh yeah, but that's really, it's a certain type of film. But documentary's always been something interesting to me. I grew up, my grandma would always tell me Nazi stories, trickster stories.
Yes.
And so I just was always so engaged by those stories and wanted to document them for ourselves, because not everyone gets those types of stories.
That's so true.
And so there was always that gnawing at my brain as I started progressing down this journey. And that was actually one of my first films out of film school. That went to the American Indian Film Festival.
That's right.
Huge experience right in my first year.
For sure, yeah, that's huge.
But yeah, so that's docs always kind of pulling at me. I definitely want to do narrative stuff. I've done some narrative stuff. But a lot of the stuff pulls me towards docs and type of stuff.
So you're here at Hot Docs with a feature film. So what's it titled? I tell people #Skoden, but is that correct?
Yeah, I think you can say it however you want.
However you want.
For me, the hashtag is very important.
Yes.
Because of the story of the meme and how it is so tied into social media.
Yes.
The hashtag is very important. It is a way of, for me, reclaiming that space on social media for Pernell, and to kind of recontextualize that whole meme and to bring it back to Pernell, the real person who is there.
That's
right.
right.
The whole point of the film is to do that. So it's, I guess, my way and everyone else who's part of the film is taking back part of that. That word for Pernell.
For sure.
And for folks who haven't seen it, I have seen the film, but for folks who haven't seen the film, it is about a photo that became a meme. It had, I guess, in the beginning, not great sort of connotations around that picture, and then it was adopted by the indigenous community, and hence the hashtag that we're talking about. How did you have a connection to the person in the photo, Pernell Badarm, and when did you realize, I know this person and I want to kind of do more of a deep dive, I guess?
Well, yeah, it just goes back to the first time I saw the meme. Some friends we were sitting around a table hanging out, and someone was on scrolling on their phone, and they laughed, and they're like, "Oh, isn't this cool?"
Yeah.
Everyone was like, "Oh, yeah."
Yes.
There's other indigenous people see something else.
Yes, of
and
course.
I get it. But when I saw it, I was like, "Oh shit!" I know the type of person he was. He was a very kind, caring person. Never really wanted to be violent, really. And to see that image, you kind of know something had to have pushed him, or something. There's a certain context to that.
Right.
And so with that, I was always like, "Oh, someone needs to say something," but I can understand how troubling that would be for their family, right?
Right.
It's like, I just know him for a few years. He had addiction issues, he lived on the streets, so there's all these complicated layers. Because of how popular the meme became online within the indigenous community, I initially didn't want to step forward anything other than something that should be done.
Right.
As the years went over, a CBC article came out that kind of helped recontextualize that, so I was like, oh yeah. That's good, that's helping, but then you still see the meme persisting. And it wasn't until a few years working with film and documentaries, because the meme came out and kind of set the timeline.
Yes.
Step back a bit.
Yeah.
So the meme first came out, or I first saw it in like 2014 or 15, when I just finished film school. And then just over the years progressed. I think the CBC article came out in 2018. And so just over the years, seeing the progression or the story associated with the meme, it still felt like something else needed to be told. And because I had that connection, because over these years I learned, I built my skill set up.
Sure.
As a storyteller and as a filmmaker. I kind of eventually felt ready when Ken Sue from Telus Originals reached out to me, and he was like, "Hey, we're taking pictures at Telus Originals. Let's just chat and see if there's anything that can work." And it's just kind of snowballed.
Oh wow, that's always. I find that always interesting, because you never know where you might have your idea, but we don't always know where it goes, and then we see the film, right? But there's always a journey that kind of accompanies that story. You have access to some footage of Pernell when he was alive, and I found it so interesting and also so moving, right? Because we get to see this person that kind of became immortalized in this meme. How did you narrow down what were you going to include in the film?
Well, there just wasn't a lot. It was like the footage we have of Pernell is from an older documentary.
Yes.
Way back in 2009, before I went to film school. Very young, green filmmaker. Just like, all I need to do is set up a camera, talk to people, and then I go home and I cut it together.
Sure.
It's not as simple to make.
Not as simple.
So I learned quite a bit. And so that was part of it. It's just knowing that film footage was there, so used for a very different context.
Yes.
And so I had stuff. Pernell, the very first person I interviewed, like the first tape of I was shooting back on tapes back then.
Yes.
DV tape.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so I was looking back at that footage, and I was like, I know I have this footage. First tape, first interview, was on the camera.
You also connected with some of Pernell's family and good friend Mark. I kind of want to talk a little bit about reaching out to the community to tell them you want to make this film and what the dialogue was and how they responded.
Yeah, no, reaching out to his family was incredibly important. And for me, I didn't quite know how to go about it. I mean, the Blood Reserve is the largest reserve in Canada by landmass.
Right.
The second or third largest by population. So it's huge. I'm related to everyone, but it's always like, how do you get there?
Yes.
And so I just reached out to someone who continues to post. She's featured in the film. It's Amber.
Yes.
She kind of posted a lot about it. So I just reached out to her and said, hey, this is my idea. Who I talked to. Like, I'm not trying to exploit it. Being very clear about it. Like, I'm not trying to come in and do this thing. It has to, the permission from the family. And she led me to Mark. And Mark is actually one of my relatives.
Oh, right, yes.
And so from that, I just reached out to him and said, okay, Amber said, representative for his family, our family. Can we chat? He said, yeah, come down. And Mark runs an organization called the Stage Clan.
Yes.
They do a lot of patrols in Lethbridge, people on the street, sandwiches, creating a sense of community. It's really wonderful work.
It does.
I went to one of their meetings and explained in front of everyone what I was wanting to do.
You had to pitch.
Yeah,
you had to do a pitch.
And it was really great. And then, everyone thought it was a cool idea. And then not too long later, me and Mark went to a separate room. We discussed how it might look, how would this happen, all those kind of details. It's like, okay, your intentions are good. It's engaged that we're trying to do something good here. So then I just started writing up an idea, knowing that when I could come back to this is all during the pandemic.
Right.
So very the meal was
everything
outside,
was yes,
social
yeah.
distancing, and Mark's brother's late 60s, so I didn't want to put him or his family
at risk.
Living in the Okanagan, flight or drive, so there's all risks of these. Slowed the process a bit. But once I got to talk to Cornell's brother, I told him these are our goals. Mark was with me. He was on board. Only if Dallas was agreeable to it, right? That was it. I just pitched in. There's no pressure. I'm not here you've got to sign this paper and I'm going to disappear for...
Yeah, right?
I'm going to disappear for 2 years and I'm going to come back and I'm going to be like, look, this film's done.
Right.
They were, I tried to keep them involved as much as I could throughout the process. But, film's so technical, it's like I don't want to bore them.
Yeah. The other jargon stuff. Yeah.
100 rough cuts to kind of figure out what the story is. So
right.
Once I got something to show it to them, they're also part of the films. We just worked together. We all kind of agreed that this was what the intention of the film was going to be, and then we just worked together and filmed it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're sharing that because I'm wondering what that. I assume that there were different versions of the film once you're editing and all of that in conjunction with your team because you had a really great team behind the scenes. When you came back to the community to show, I guess, the version, like the final as it can be, what was that like and what was their feedback?
Well, I just ended up showing it through links. So everyone, I just told them, here's what I have. I didn't quite do a really fine cut. I think it was like a nice, longer, rough cut. I think it was closer to 2 hours. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe not that. But it's just like, this is all the material that I like and we've honed and it's polished to a certain degree and the intention's there. We're probably going to trim it, but this is the stuff I'm picking on. Here's the context that all the words exist in. Let me know if there's any issues.
Right.
If there's anything that's uncomfortable or we're too open when you're interviewing people in space, and then sometimes within that space people say stuff and they're like,
maybe not include that.
So I always gave everyone that space, and before every interview I explain that, conversation. If right after you feel like something you don't want to include, or 2 weeks or a month, by the time I get to the edit and bring you something, it's open to hey, so that was always an open thing. Everyone was part of the film. So when I showed it to them, I was like, is there anything? Do you like the story? Do you think I'm getting anything wrong? Like, there's a lot of kind of
like a temp check.
Yeah, like things you want to make sure you're getting right. And so everyone was generally pretty positive. I don't think I remember any real requests or changes. Yeah, not that I can remember, or at least nothing major.
Right, and so then you went and did your final cut. Can you talk a little bit about the people that kind of are on board behind the scenes? You had a great cinematographer. You have some people who are established in their craft.
Yeah, like our cinematographer was Tamara Canoe. She was great. I've never really worked with a cinematographer before because I'm, like I said,
you do everything.
I do everything. So I'm very very particular, but she was really great. I think really patient with me.
That's good.
Then we also have Dylan Haverning who did sound. Wonderful guy, amazing. And then our post-sound team is Troy Slocum and Rob Denton. I can't remember the company right now.
That's good.
I've worked with them for a few projects I've produced. Me and Troy were old friends from when I moved to Vancouver, so it's really great. Always working with him. He knows what I like, so it's like pretty much a plug and play with him.
Right.
He knows my taste.
Okay. Right.
He generally has an idea of like, okay. They're really great, and then the editor is really huge help too. So they do a bit of the editing. Desmond Carr and Kane Stewart. They really helped me to. I guess there's part of the film where I become a part of the film.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
And so they were people that helped me kind of lay that context. That was something initially wanted to be a part of. Family, I'm staying back in the filmmaking, but as things progress, it became apparent that I should be a part of it. And so they were really great at helping me shape and mold those pieces out of my comfort zone. I like to joke that I got into the film kicking and screaming, even though I'm the producer and director.
I know, reluctantly, right?
Yeah, I'm the one who has the controls. I would just say no, but you gotta listen to your collaborators and colleagues. There's a bunch of people who I showed the edit to, people I really respect, who came back to me and gave me some really great notes in terms of story, and I think Liz Marshall and Elemiah Tailfield is really great at helping lay that context of why I needed to be part of the film.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, so I'm really grateful to them for the patience and being able to explain stuff to me. It's like, they're like, yeah, we get it, we want to be part of it, but...
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I've previewed the film, so ultimately you are not the subject of the film. The film is bigger than that, right? And I think inevitably, like you said, you are part of the community, so it makes sense that you kind of play a role there. Where was I going? Yes, I had a thought. I was going to ask you about connecting with people that worked with Purnell or supported him, like from the community. So, for example, you had people who worked in the shelter system and like in other support organizations that knew Purnell at his most vulnerable, but also knew him outside of that environment. What was it like to connect with them? I think Deanna is someone who's stayed with me because of the way that she talked about Purnell.
Yeah, so Deanna actually knew her, so we both worked at the shelter. At the same time, she's such a lovely person and has like such a huge heart, so it's very important with her. Yeah, it was just texting or a call saying, hey Deanna, talking to her family and I'm thinking of doing this. She loved the idea, and then it was just a conversation of how would she be a participant and how can we do it.
Right. Was there anything that surprised you at all, or maybe not even surprised you while you were kind of collecting information and putting the film together?
I don't know if it's surprising, but it's just recontextualizing life. I don't know if it never quite made it in the films clearly, but it kind of just appeared throughout. Where Mark was talking about Purnell's life and how he lived in the city. He lived in the city in like our old movies. He he survived on his own. He had his own territory within the city.
Right.
So it was really it was a conversation that we were just having beside filmmaking, like doing stuff. He lived with his old ancestors. He lived it in the prison. He survived.
So kind of on his own terms?
Yeah. Like, despite the system that was putting so much pressure on him, he just really found his own way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's so many parts of the film that I think are so poignant in terms of, I guess the bigger themes of, the system failing many of us in different ways. And also the system... or people working in the system thinking, okay, maybe we have ideas of supporting the community, but they don't meet the community where it's at. And I think that is so universal across this place called Canada, of the governments have ideas and they kind of want people to kind of almost like in a puzzle. We have to fit specific shapes, and supposedly that's how things improve.
Yeah, you have to make those jumps to get the base level.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there are many layers in the film in terms of how you come at it. You can think about it in terms of family members that have maybe experienced some of the same issues like Pernell had. And I think you also have it maybe it's in the notes where I read around how just considering how we consume images too. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what you kind of want us to reflect on.
Yeah, I guess in terms of reflecting on this, for me it's how we see people and how we see people, especially people who are living on the street. We only see them for a small section of their life. That image becomes burned in us. Like, we all know that image. And for me, it was really important within the film not to have any of those types of images.
Right.
Yes. We all know it's the long lens of someone, doing so. And, the camera's we're getting this, and we got to show it. And so it's important for me to do that all. So it really is about how we see people, especially within this community.
Yes.
How, humans have families. There's a whole complex human that been through so much, right?
Yes. Have you shown the film outside of the community yet?
No, aside from the people who were in it, no one else has seen the film. I wanted to do a community film screening before coming out here, but we were literally just racing to the end.
Yes.
I think it might have been the beginning of April. There was actually 2 shots with the online.
Yeah.
I was like,
yes.
Sorry, we need to change these.
Yes.
So we were just racing to So just because of that, we had no time to share it with the community. But once these 2 festivals are after Hot Dogs and Docs,
yeah, I was gonna say, where are you going next? Exactly.
Straight to Vancouver from here for another 2 screenings, which is awesome. I appreciate it. That's the film community I grew up in.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So the film has its legs now a little bit.
I hope so.
Yes. So for people who want to follow the journey in the film, how do we find you?
Yeah, well, you can follow our Instagram, which is skoden.film at Instagram.
Ah, yes, I have that.
And also on Facebook, skoden.film.
Yes, we'll tag the film so people know where to go. Damien, my time is up. I got the hands up. Thank you so much for speaking with me.
No,
thank you.